Go. So hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Jewish Wisdom for Coping with a Pandemic. It is coming upon a year since we started meeting. I think our first meeting was March 19th of 2020. So it is unbelievable that we are, a year into this. But at the end of this meeting, I have some information about what we'll be starting next week. So just a plug, if you want to hang out and hear about that and talk about it, I will be happy to do so. For today is a little addendum to our Purim meeting last week, which I have to say was really fun. I mean, I just had a lot of fun, for those of you who could make it, and I hope for those of you who didn't, enjoyed your Purim celebrations. Hi, Bonnie, welcome. I know it's your first time. Nice to have you here. Okay, so as is our custom, let us begin with a short meditation to help us kind of create a sacred space and become present. So please relax in your chair and close your eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. As you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass, like watching a cloud pass by in the sky. And with each inhale, imagine yourself floating in the ocean. And as a wave comes in, the inhale, you float up with the wave. With the exhale, you float back down again. Inhale, floating up. And exhale, floating back down. And on your next inhale, think to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, today as we get ready to begin exploring the soul trait of generosity, let's see. Let me get ready to share here. This quote from Rabbi Mordechai Luzzatto from his classic Mussar book, Path of the Just, also known as Mesilat Yesharim. So, and he wrote that external motions stimulate the inner ones. External motions stimulate the inner ones. So what do you think he means, and how do you relate to that personally? Joanne, welcome. We're talking about the quote, external emotions stimulate the inner one. Gail.
I think maybe it has something to do with what they tell us about ritual. They say the behavior is what you should do and eventually the heart will follow. You're supposed to go through the steps of the ritual and ultimately it comes to mean something inside.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Na'aseh
absolutely.
v'nishma.
Sorry, was that you?
Na'aseh v'nishma.
Mm.
Do it and then you'll understand.
Yeah. Yes. So does anyone have experience with that, where that's kind of worked or not worked for you, kind of starting with doing and then it brings about some kind of change for you?
I'll speak. And so I think when I make an effort to do something that maybe is difficult for me, like calling somebody, having to talk to someone about something, and that's sometimes often difficult for me. But it kind of makes it easier to make the next call. And also I think I feel better about myself internally for having made that reach out.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. Other thoughts? Sometimes if we kind of wait until we're in the mood to do something, we'll never do it. Sometimes we just have to kind of go and, this relates, relates to the soul trait of enthusiasm. That's what enthusiasm is all about. It's just, taking the action, moving forward, but it's also, that's one of the reasons why enthusiasm is called like an ornament to all of the other soul traits, because I think as we'll see, it also relates to practicing generosity. Carol.
I have a really concrete example, and that is the whole idea of doing a gratitude journal. You may not feel gratitude, and then you start to think about, well, I'm really grateful. I have a roof over my head, and I have this and that and the other, and you suddenly realize, oh yeah, I really am grateful, and you start to feel it. It goes inside. It's something I've experienced all through this pandemic because I keep a journal. I write almost every night. I've missed a few, but mostly every night. I think about what I was grateful for today. Simple things too, like Mussar. Or just having a computer that works.
Yeah, having had my computer go down for a few days until that's not there, you don't realize how grateful we should be that it is there. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a wonderful example. Because that's what I'm hearing you say is just an act of journaling and writing things down has made a big difference. Okay, my cat is begging to get out of the room. Hang on just a second, excuse me. All right. I am very well trained. Okay, so let's talk about this soul trait of generosity. Okay, so generosity, there are really two different forms. One is kind of spontaneous generosity, just giving from the heart, not out of guilt or not out of any reason. It's just like feeling moved to give. And there's a second form of generosity, which is obligatory giving, which we use the name tzedakah, which is giving to charity. This is something that we are required to do. And the rabbis say as a guideline, you should give between 10 and 20% of your income to charity. And even if you receive tzedakah, you should give tzedakah. So I'm curious, like, how do these two forms of generosity relate to this kind of Luzzatto quote that we just looked at about external motions stimulating internal ones? Or do they? Oops. What was it supposed to happen?
Um,
Hey, Lenny. Yeah, Bonnie.
I'm an educator, and I'm a day school educator, and so one of the things I learned as an educator with tzedakah and with spontaneous is that when you do it because you're supposed to, and when kids in religious school, lots of kids know to bring their tzedakah, they don't know it doesn't translate into charity, but they know to bring it so it can go in the tzedakah box.
Mhm.
And the best example I can give you is that I have 4 kids, 2 of whom I did not give birth to, but I gave marriage to. And so they are my kids, and we had tzedakah boxes in the home. And when my youngest one was 7, I think, they would take it from whatever allowance and bring it in on Kabbalat Shabbat and put it in the box.
Mhm.
When we were on the East Coast, we were up at my mother and stepdad's home in Vermont, and my son found some coins. And he ran into the house and he said to my mother, Nana, where's your tzedakah box? Now, this is not a Jewish kid. He'd only been in my home for a year, 2 years at that point, or 3 years. And my mother didn't know the term tzedakah box, didn't know it, and said, what are you asking me for, Austin? And he said, where do I put the coins? Where's your tzedakah box? So he was the best example. This is what we did at home. I started my biggest memory is stuffing envelopes at the age of 5 for the League of Women Voters. No one told, and my dad would jokingly call it the League of Women Vultures, but he did it very proudly as my mother was president. They didn't ask me. They said, we're doing this here. And so that kind of activity became what I do. I work in the nonprofit world. So I love that piece with that quote. I don't know the quote. And it just seems to me that when you do it because you're supposed to, then you'll just do it.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. Other people with experiences about this, either as kids or as adults, or like giving tzedakah or sort of more spontaneous giving. Joanne, you're on mute.
Yeah, my mother did have one of those tzedakah boxes, and she said some old rabbi used to come around. Yeah, I guess it was for JNF or something, and collect with the Jewish home, orphan home for girls, I think, in Jerusalem. But I don't know if I was taught that, but and I remember being even late in life and late in her life, being surprised that she did still give, because I was doing her taxes, like $5 to this charity and $5 to that charity. And she didn't have a lot. She really had mostly Social Security towards the end. And, but I think I learned about giving charity from my late in life Jewish education. And I feel like it's an important part of my life, not giving so much, but doing acts of kindness and also giving. And then I get, you give to one charity and you get 14 similar ones, or even, I get the Catholic charities too, and the Christian, this and that. And though I'm Jewish, because I don't know, they share mailing lists and whatever. Then I get overwhelmed. So, but I still feel, like, and then I started throwing out all the requests for charities that come in, especially new ones. And I guess there's some that are dear to my heart. And I feel like I'm not going to give up giving charity, even though I can't take much of a tax deduction for it anymore either, because I don't itemize anymore. And I'm thinking like, maybe I give too much. But they say, give according to your charity, something like this. I don't know the Hebrew. and reap according to your loving kindness or something like that. It's like what you get back for doing that, you know, and it just feels like you helped the world a little bit, you know, and repair the world. And I think that's pretty ingrained in me, that's what, as a Jew, that's what I'm supposed to do. And
Thank
also,
you,
I forgot
Joanne. You brought up a couple of good points there. And one thing you touched on just really briefly, which is a really, really important point, is that generosity encompasses more than giving money. I mean, often that's like the most convenient thing, but giving kindness, giving your time, I mean, these things are, you know, can be far more impactful and valuable than giving money. I mean, right now it is the time when so many people are hurting and out of work. Giving money is, there's always going to be people who need that, but there are many ways to be generous. Carol.
Well, yes, in fact, it kind of leads into a little bit of what I was going to say. First, I want to say when I was a little girl, my parents always made sure that we had our, usually it was, I think it was a dime for the tzedakah box. That's how old I am. And I think it was eventually became part of our allowance. You have to leave out a dime for the tzedakah box at religious school. But I was thinking more about when you do service. And when I was teaching, we had a program that was, we wanted to develop the feeling of community. And one of the things we decided was that there's absolutely no reason why our little students can't pick up the bag of garbage from the can. There's a big school, so a lot for our custodians to do, and schlep it out to where they throw away the garbage. It's not that far, it's not that big a deal. So we had our students do that. Oi, you should have heard the parents. That's the custodian's job. My children should. Well, we did it anyway. But what that does, as does the monetary giving, if that's what you can do, is it builds a sense of being part of the community. Because when you do that, you're saying, I'm giving back to the community. It's not this like, oh, I'm this wonderful person that's doing this for these poor people way over there. No, this is our community, because we're all part of that community. So if you give service or if you give money, and in my case, I'm where I can only do money, but a friend of mine is building homes for the homeless with Habitat for Humanity, which I think is absolutely fabulous. And he's hooked in with the Abrahamic, was it the Abrahamic, whatever it is,
Alliance.
organization. What? Yeah,
Alliance.
Thank you. Yes, and he's going and building, and he's an old guy like me too, so, but he's healthier. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's not about you. It becomes about being linking into the community and being part of, and it doesn't matter how much or how little you give. If you are doing it with an open heart and with an eye to the community, then that's what you're supposed to do.
Thank you, Carol.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, wonderful points about community. Eileen, did you have your hand up before?
I did. The difference between tzedakah and charity and giving with spiritual meaning, I think, goes back. There's to the differences of the both when you give out of obligation versus you give out of using your heart on a regular basis to give. Developing that integrity of giving often, it doesn't have to be much. And it originally, didn't it start with giving a portion of your crops from the land, which we do in our community garden to our service center and food pantries. And that always gives me the best feeling, because you work so hard to produce something and you're giving it away.
Yeah.
And you never know how much you're going to have to give on any given day. So that's a different way of tzedakah.
Absolutely.
Question, though, if you give from your heart, then it might be a sometime thing. Are you saying, I'm not clear, because if you give out of obligation, then you're doing justice. You must do it. I mean, you're obligated to do it because it's the just and the correct thing to do.
Social justice, right.
Rather than just because you're feeling magnanimous in the moment.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I think that can be, we're all on a spectrum for all of the soul traits. And if we're kind of used to giving tzedakah regularly, maybe our challenge is to try to find ways to open our hearts even more and to be mindful about it instead of just, throwing the dollar in the tzedakah box or in the middle of a conversation without even reading where the money's going. But there are other ways to just sort of mindfully really trying to think about, okay, these are the people that we're helping this month, and this is how, I'm really wishing them well. And, oh, wow, this one really touches my heart a little bit more, so I'm going to maybe give a little bit extra. Or, geez, I really can't give any extra, but maybe I'll tell my friends about this charity or something, and I'll try to support them in another way. All right, well, I think this is all a good segue to the next talking point, which brings us back to actually the Purim story, which I had this up from last month. So this is toward the very end of the book of Esther, and these are kind of the four mitzvot, or the four commandments of Mordechai, where he says, there's, the message was sent out to all of the provinces, and the Jews got a respite from their foes, and for the month was transformed for them from sorrow to joy, from mourning to celebration, and to celebrate them as 2 days of feasting, and merrymaking. Okay, so you tell the story, do feasting and merrymaking, and it's an occasion for sending gifts to one another and giving presents to the poor. So I saw Rabbi Sharon Brous from Ikar give a teaching about this, and she called this kind of a little bit of a clever move, sort of slipping these in. But suddenly, in this holiday about feasting and merrymaking and telling the story, we're also giving gifts to one another and giving gifts to the poor. So what do you make of that? What are some thoughts about this? I mean, one thing that strikes me is, why does it specify two different types of giving gifts to friends and giving gifts to the poor?
Well, if you have poor friends, I don't know.
Two in one.
And no, but you're supposed to give the food thing to at least one person, and I think the money gets to to at least two.
Yeah, those are the kind of the details, but why would we, why not just
But one, I think,
have
is
our
like,
drinks and get in our costumes? Why is this giving included in the holiday?
I think it's to show our gratitude that we were saved, and it's not just a fun party, It's not Halloween. It's it's also, we fasted and prayed and we were saved.
Mhm.
And so it's our way of showing our thanks, and maybe our thankful that our friends are with us, and we're with them, and also to help uplift the downtrodden at the same time, not to forget them, and just be like in your little clique or whatever.
Yeah, thank you. Carrie?
Why, my question is, why are we not commanded to do this at every holiday? Why is Purim particular? I would think that as a Jewish, as a Jew, that is ingrained in us to do, and so I'm curious why it's just Purim, or maybe it's not just Purim, where we are commanded to give gifts.
That's a great question, and I don't know that whole context. So certainly, the tzedakah box is always out, but I don't know the answer to that question. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I have a quick one.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the sages, whoever wrote this book, here it is, we're in the middle of this joyous, fun, silly, crazy party, and they wanted to link that joy with giving and make that connection so giving would also be joyful.
Mm.
Just a thought.
I think that's a great interpretation. And I think part of the readings on generosity is giving is joyful. Like when you really are giving, there is a certain joy that can be sort of unleashed. Again, especially when it's that sort of heartfelt, spontaneous giving, not the, you've gotten 20 emails and boy, we're really in trouble if you don't donate, but it's the, wow, I'm really moved to just sort of be generous and to open my hand and to support this other person.
I think-
Yes.
If you're really going to drink to the point that you don't know if it's Mordechai or Haman that you're using the grogger against, I think that that having that requirement says, hey, wait a minute, stop. Think about other people.
Mm-hmm.
Which this year was an interesting year for me in terms of the amount of donation requests that I received from Jewish organizations during Purim were greater than what I got last fall before the high holidays.
Mm.
And I guess they may be shifting, or my name came up an awful lot of time this spring.
Yeah, that is an interesting report. All this is making me think, and part of this is when, Joanne was talking about, we've been saved. Well, let's tell the story. We've been saved. How did we been saved? But what were we saved for? What were we saved for? So we could, have a party, or were we saved for, our mission to repair the world, to support other people, and there's also an element, and this is the Mussar element, of course, which is to become better people ourselves. Yeah, Gail.
I'm thinking there may be some parallel in, I was once discussing with my rabbi, the Misha Berach list. And I said, it never bodes well. Anyone gets on there, they're all going to die. No one ever gets better. And I begin to wonder why we even do this and what's it going to do for anyone. And she said, it's to remind everyone else, first of all, to support those people so they don't feel so isolated. But also, and to her even more important, to remind people that whatever you're feeling there at services, you might be rejoicing, it might be your bar mitzvah or whatever, but to remember that there are people in the community who are not whole. And I'm wondering if that's the same kind of thing, that in the middle of our celebration, we need to remember that not everyone in the community is whole, which ties in with what you said about Tikkun Olam.
Yeah. Thank you, Gail. That's a wonderful way to put it. That is a wonderful way to put it.
And
yes.
I think the Purim gifts are given before Purim, so everyone can celebrate equally. To make sure that everyone is able to celebrate.
Yeah, great point.
Because my son got Purim Hamantaschen from their temple. They sent it all out to every family to make sure everyone had Hamantaschen this year to celebrate together.
Wow.
So
yeah, my wife baked gluten-free Hamantaschen. I haven't had
That's what I
Hamantaschen in 5 or 10 years, so I was so thrilled. I mean, unfortunately, she baked a lot of them, and I've been doing a job on them every day since. But they're quite good.
mm-hmm.
How did it taste?
It tasted wonderful.
Really? Free?
Yeah, she's found a really good flour, which is just a 1-for-1 flour substitution. So they've gotten much better with their,
I think
gluten-free
I like
product.
them better because they're lighter.
Yeah,
I like them
they were
better.
good.
And I froze some.
That's a good idea. Maybe we should freeze some of these. Okay, so another point I just want us to keep in mind, again, back to this idea about changing us, is again, if we go back to our external actions create inner changes. Sorry, I'm not getting the quote exactly right. But this idea of giving is also changes us. And it changes us from an awareness, there's sort of an awareness level that like not everybody's partying, not everybody's whole, not everybody's happy. But also, that just sort of recognition makes us more whole people. And by giving, that makes us, that makes changes within. Okay, so I have a slightly different view of the spectrum of generosity this month. Because on the one hand, we can get into stinginess, just someone who is not, too little generosity, they're not willing to give. And there's a phrase for that, actually. It's called Timtum Halev, which means the stopped up heart. So what is this? And this is, what does it mean if you have a stopped up heart?
Scarred.
Scarred? Say more.
Traumatized? Unable to feel.
Unable to feel. Okay. Yeah. If we're not, it's almost like I get this image of like, being isolated from others, not being able to connect. And then next on our spectrum is the obligatory giving, which, maybe is a little further left than it needs to be. But then we have sort of the generosity, or the kind of move to the open heart, like the sort of spontaneous giving. And then, if we get all the way to the right, we get excessive generosity. And what's that mean? Like also traits, having too much can be just as bad as not having enough. So what might, what's the danger of too much generosity? Yeah, Joanne.
You have to make sure you can pay your bills.
Right.
And don't overextend yourself. And yeah, I have this problem. I can't balance my checkbook.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Lenny, are you raising your hand there? Yes. Lenny, do you want to add something?
Did you say Leanie?
Yes, Lenny.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. I don't want to sound self-absorbed or whatever, but I've been accused of being too generous. And it's not about money. I don't have a building with my name on it or something, but selfishly, I really get so much out of helping other people. I really am not a do-gooder. It's just, I feel like my heart is flowing. When you talk about a stopped up heart, I feel like everything is flowing smoothly. I did something today that I just feel so gratified that it's not a matter of, I'm not looking for anything back. I don't even need a thank you or anything. So I don't know what it would feel like to have an excess of generosity. I don't really understand that.
Right. Well, it's I have some thoughts. Carol, what did you have?
Yeah, I had an example of an excess of generosity in my own life, not me. My mother was one of these wonderful people who was always out in the community and always going to bat for PTA and everything else. But I remember saying, maybe to my sister or my brother, or one of them saying to me, Mom has so much time for everybody else's children. And as a result, we felt that we weren't getting the best of her. So that's something you have to be careful of. You need to make sure that the people that need you the most, who are your children, your family, that you have enough time for them.
Right. So maybe there's an element of where some people feel, you know, like they're not getting enough of you if you're being generous, and or where you're prioritizing your time. Maybe it's giving away more money so you can't, you know, pay your own bills. But it's you know, there was an Ask Amy. I love this column, Ask Amy, which is this you know, advice columnist. And someone was saying, well, everyone's always giving me a hard time for writing thank you notes. And you know, sometimes people might say you're being too generous because they're feeling a little bit threatened, or they're not, you know, giving that much time. I mean, it's very hard to know. Like, each of us has to make our own decisions and our own trade-offs about what's, you know, if you know, someone is at severe health risk and they're out there volunteering in the COVID ward, you know, is that an example of too much generosity? Well, some people might say so, but I think it is, you know, when it comes in, if it's coming in conflict with one's own basic health and one's own basic needs, that's where we need to kind of ask the question, am I giving too much and not having enough for myself? Those are my thoughts. All right, so now we're getting ready to gear up for our, whoops, this is not where I want to be. I want to share again. Okay, so we're going to get ready for our breaking out with our partners. I may I have a volunteer to read this excerpt, please?
I'll read. Two children who had witnessed Dion's spontaneous acts of generosity earlier in the week had reciprocated with a gift to his grandma. Was it a coincidence, a conscious act of generosity, or an unconscious response to modeling? Marilyn Saltzman, your love is blasting in my heart.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a book I've quoted from before. She actually is writing about her own grandchildren and how that helped her Mussar journey. And her grandchildren were preschoolers, and there was like a giveaway, and one boy in the class was upset because he really wanted like one of the little army hats. And so her grandson, Dion, just gave him his hat, you know, just traded it for whatever he had. And then all of a sudden, the other kids from that little table started bringing her little presents during the week, like a little stick or a little, you know, piece of gum or something that they had. So she's wondering, was this coincidence, or was there some response to the generosity that they had witnessed, or was it an issue of modeling? So kind of to use this as a jumping off point for your conversation in the breakout groups. You know, what do you think about, like, is generosity something, how important is it that we think of this as a model for other people? Should it really be something we're doing to open our own hearts? And, you know, does it matter to you? Like, if you think about it as modeling, or you think about it as something for your own growth, you know, is one harder or easier than the other? And of course, please take a moment to check in and just see where you are. probably 5 or 6 minutes today. So, okay, the rooms are open. You should see something on your screen to join your breakout room. Janos, will you be able to join? Oh, I see you did. So there we are. Okay, everyone. Well, for those of you on the live streaming service, this is where I end the streaming every week. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So I would love to hear, what are some insights that came up in your conversations?
Well, Lenny and I talked a little bit about our experience as children, you know, what we saw our mother or father do, how they behave towards other people. And I think we think that both things are equally, they're not exclusive. When you are open-hearted, you are modeling for other people. You know, maybe not thinking of it as modeling for other people, but other people see it, and your children and friends see it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Joanne. Other thoughts or insights? Yeah, Carrie.
We talked about how, as parents and teachers, you do model, but then as you get older and become adults, it's not a question of modeling. It becomes something that you should do. And we talked about how can you get people to be generous or give of themselves if it's not just a tax deduction. What are the what's going on with that? You know, how do you reach people and get them to open their heart to just give and not get something from it necessarily? We didn't solve that problem.
Yeah, thank you. I did a really interesting reading, and if I thought of it, I may have tried to find an excerpt to include, but in one of my classes, we started reading about the gift economy. When a lot of indigenous cultures, there's not like a capitalist system, there's sort of a gift economy where if you received something as a gift, you were expected to pass it on and add something to it. So it was like the more times something was shared, the more valuable it became, the more it would sort of grow. It's sort of like a pay it forward on steroids kind of concept where, and it's just a very different mindset. It's not sort of a concept that, you know, you hear a lot of talk about sort of in the mainstream culture about giving or about generosity, or it does tend to get sort of wrapped up in tax deduction conversations. Yeah, so thank you, Carrie. Well, if you do come up with something, please email me and let me know, and I'll pass it on to the rest of the community.
My neighborhood did something like you're talking about with the gift economy. We would give gift baskets at the winter holiday time, and a neighbor would bring it next door and with whatever goodies they wanted to put in, and then you would fill it with goodies and you bring it to the next door, and it went all around the neighborhood with people all contributing to it. It was kind of fun.
That sounds really fun. I love that. Thank you, Gail. Yeah, Bonnie. Remember to unmute when you go.
I was on a development training call recently, and this woman said, for Hanukkah, my kids know it's 4 days of giving and 4 days of getting and 4 days of giving. And I thought, that's brilliant. It's not like our kids probably need much. And it wasn't, it was using their money that they had put aside to be able to give to somebody. Something, whether it was cash or something, you know, Jewish Family Services in the South Bay doesn't have the giving tree. They have a dreidel, I think, that has all different dreidels hanging off of it. And it was all done virtually this year, but it's $50 gift card for a 42-year-old man at Target. You know, they're all different levels of things. So I love that. I am going to talk to my kids this summer about 4 days of getting and 4 days of giving for Hanukkah.
Love it. Thank you. You know, when I was in Rome a couple years ago, I visited the Great Synagogue, which is a very cool architectural building, and there's a lot of history there, and there's also a museum. And one of the things in the museum, and they didn't sort of say much about it, but it was the tzedakah rolls from the neighborhood. And it was like the lists of all these names, on it. So it's like someone was in charge of like giving out money to like certain people, and they didn't really have much explanation, but I was just fascinated by this. I was like, what? Obviously it was a very big deal. Like the person who was in charge of giving out the tzedakah, must have been a very trusted person, because there were hundreds of names on this list. And clearly it was a very important and central part of the community. So this is something which has, been around a really, really long time. I mean, as someone pointed out earlier, it's in the Torah. I mean, this was part of the biblical, Israel. So seeing that connection, though, from a fairly, modern, time of a couple hundred years ago, I thought was pretty interesting. Well, I have one more thing that I can share, just as we're getting ready to shop, to close up for today. And may I have this volunteer to read this first bullet, please?
Sure, I'll read it. If you see a person giving generously, it means their wealth will grow. If you see someone who shuns charity, it means their wealth will dwindle.
Okay, so do you buy that?
Depends how you define wealth.
Okay.
I just agree with it.
Do you agree with it?
Well, if you're talking about money, maybe not. But if you're talking about wealth of spirit, that's something else again.
Right. So there's one sort of interpretation, which is just wealth of spirit. And I don't know, my mother always said that if you're like generous with your money, money will come back to you. And I can't like point to any physical laws, but it does sort of feel that way to me. I've tried to be like very, good tipper and very generous, and it's, things sort of worked out for me. I mean, maybe that's like my privilege because I have, a good, opportunities for making money. But it seems like it's a very open-hearted way of looking at the world. It comes at the world from a view of plenty, not a view of scarcity. Like there's enough to go around, and you'll be okay. No matter what you decide to do. All right. Well, let's close our eyes as we wrap up for generosity for the week. So please close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. Let's think ahead to the coming week. What is one act of generosity that we can do? What is one way that we can give to others? Maybe it's an extra financial donation. Maybe it's speaking with someone, a friend we haven't talked to in a while. Maybe it's speaking to a homeless person. Hold that image in your mind of your hands open, your heart opening, and just giving. Now tilt your head back and smile. Let's take a moment of gratitude for this time together in community. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, thank you so much for being here this week. If you'd like to hang out a couple more minutes, I'll share with you what our plans are for next week and for this next chunk of time.
Okay.
And if you need to or would like to go, that's fine. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye. So a couple months ago, I talked about sending out a survey, but I decided I didn't need to do that. And an opportunity came to my attention that I could get access to the Tikkun Midot curriculum, which was put together by Rabbi David Jaffe for the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. This is something, I can't remember when it was first put together, but it was circulated to a number of different synagogues. David Jaffe is the author of Changing the World from the Inside Out. He's really a wonderful person. He's very deeply spiritual. So there's a number of different midot that we'll be covering, a number of different soul traits. Some of them were in my book, a number of them weren't. And I need to kind of look at it in a little bit more depth. My guess is we'll probably stick with 2 weeks. There's plenty of material in there. So my guess is that every week I'll take some from that material and some from other places, and we'll kind of keep going at 2 weeks per soul trait. So that is the plan. I'm pretty excited about this, and I hope you are too. And I will look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you.
We bought that curriculum, both of them, the parent-child one and the adult one. We bought them for our synagogue. One of the pilot synagogues was in Charlottesville, which is near us. And so we had been in communication with them when we were starting our own program. And it's a fabulous curriculum. I would be excited to actually study it rather than just teach from it.
Yeah, great, fantastic. Okay, well, we will get going on that next week then.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. We'll
Good
see you
night.
then.
Bye.
Right.
Aye.